As we get ready for Matthew 16, just prophesy to somebody and say, he's getting ready to turn it. He's getting ready to turn it. He's getting ready to turn it. Come on, tell somebody else, say, he's getting ready to turn it. Let's go! Matthew 16. I feel loose anyway. Matthew 16, and we're going to read a few verses. We're going to read verses 24 through 26. And when you got it, somebody just shout, I'm ready. Sounds good. And the Bible says, then Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my followers, you must give up your own way. Oh my God, can I pause there? Jesus said, if you want, he's putting onus on us. He says, if you want to be my followers, you must. That means I'm not taking it from you. I'm not making you do it. Here's the prerequisite, or here are the requirements. He said, you must, I know y'all ain't gonna like this, give up your way. Oh, it's gonna get in trouble. Take up your cross and follow me. And if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. Oh my God, he's painting a picture. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. Notice he doesn't say I will save it. He says you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the world but lose your own soul? Is there anything more? Is there anything worth more than your soul? Jesus is a deep dude. They're talking to him. They're hollering at him. Jesus starts explaining, and he says, if you want, ask your neighbor and say, what do you really want? What do you really want? If you want to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. It was interesting because he says take up your cross. He didn't say take my cross. I know we like to wear the cross, but he doesn't say take my cross. He says take your cross and then follow me. Today, I want to preach from the subject, the cost of the cross. The cost of the cross. Okay, so we're shifting. Everybody say we're shifting. And God has put a demand on us. And I know that we're shifting because I can't sleep. And those of you that have been rocking with us for any amount of time at Motivation know that when I start telling you I can't sleep, that means God is shifting things. And my prophetic nerve is aggravating me because I'm seeing things differently. I'm hearing God in a different way. And so one of the things that I have to pay attention to when God is shifting me, that means there's some things I have to let go of so he doesn't take it from me. And there's a difference between when you let go of something and when God takes it from you. I've learned this because years ago, I've told you this before, but years ago, when I used to be home for a little while, and when my wife was at school and I was home, and I'd be home with my daughter, one day she was sick. One of my girls, I think it was Jaden, she was a little one, and she wanted some soup, and she's, running around. It was Jaden or Kyle, I don't know which one of them, we have so many kids, but one of them, I think it was Jaden, was it you? It was Jaden, and she was home, she wanted some soup one day, and I said, okay, because I don't cook too many things, y'all know that. I cook hot dogs, I'm good at making ravioli, I'm good at making steak, I can make a little spaghetti, and I'm good at soup. Anything else, you're in trouble. So my daughter tells me that she wants some soup. I say, okay, I'm gonna make you some soup, go chill. Now in our old apartment back in the day, I used to be in the kitchen. It was a small apartment, so I'm in the kitchen, and this part was the dining room. So Jaden was in the dining room. She was coloring at the table, and she's coloring. She runs in the back in the room. I can't see her, but I'm cooking. I'm in there. I promised my daughter that I was gonna make her some soup. Somebody say he promised. I promised my daughter Turtle that I was gonna make her some soup. While I was making her some soup, I'm in the middle of preparing her promise for her, and she runs in the room and she grabs some scissors. She runs back into the dining room with scissors in her hand. I said, Jaden! She laughs and runs back in the room. I said, Jaden, come here. She runs back out with scissors in her hand. She's only like 5. She has scissors in her hand. I said, Jaden! She runs back in the room. Because she runs away with scissors in her hand, and I understand the danger of my 5-year-old running around with sharp scissors, I had to turn down. I had to slow down the pace of the soup. I slowed down the pace of the promise that she was going to receive. And I had to walk out of the kitchen, go around into the dining room. And as I'm going to her, she attempts to run away. But as she tries to run, I reach out and grab the scissors and I snatch it out of her hand. When I snatched it out of her hand, she started crying. And she started crying because her hand was hurting because I pulled the scissors. She had to deal with unnecessary pain because she wouldn't let go of something that had the potential to kill her. And she didn't realize if she had just put it down when Daddy said, she could have got her promise faster and excused herself from the pain. And you have to understand that there's a difference when you put something down and when God has to snatch it from you. And some of us are living our life under so much unnecessary pain because we're not willing to let it go. Do me a favor, type it, say it, do something. Just say, let it go. And so as God is shifting us, there's some things that God is requiring us to put down. There's some things that we're holding on that has the potential to kill us. And we think that we can't live without it. And God says you can't continue to live with it because what you're carrying is too great. What you're carrying has the ability to hurt you in places you don't even recognize. I had to snatch it out of her hand. And so Jesus, he's dealing with us in a way that he wants our attention. And this is why, and I was trying to figure out, I said, God, why would you give me a message like this after I just preached about friendships? And God showed me something. He said, because I had you guys take an inventory on who you have to let go of. Oh my God. I had to have you take an inventory because there's a price connected to the promise. Oh yeah, there's something that I'm requiring of you that you can't get in the condition that you're in. There's some things that won't be released to you because some people aren't ready for what God's trying to do in you. And do you realize, we're going to talk about it because there's some people that have good intentions, but they're causing you to abort what God has. We'll get there. Jesus is shifting us, and Jesus begins to talk to them. Now, understand, in this text, he was really dealing with the disciples, right? Jesus is preparing for the cross. He's preparing for the cross, and he's talking to his disciples, and when you read a little bit earlier in the chapter, he starts telling them plainly. He says, I have to go to Jerusalem. He says, I'm going to Jerusalem, and when I get there, it's going to be trouble, trouble. He's telling them he got problems in Jerusalem. And they're thinking, well, why would you go to Jerusalem if you're going to have problems? But he says, listen, my purpose, my promise, everything that God is going to release through me, everything that I'm going to do on the earth is found in Jerusalem. Don't forget that. And so he's talking to them. He says, I'm going to face many things by the hands of the elders, by the leading priests, by the teachers of the law. Everybody say church folks. Yeah, he said there's going to be some people that look like they're close to God, but they're far from God. I'm going to have some trouble with them. He says, but on the third day, I will be raised from the dead. But watch what happens. Peter responds. He's like, not my God. He's like, nah, dude, I'm good. And we see Jesus now breaking some things down, and he's sharing with them there's a cost. He said, I can't be Christ without a cost. It costs you to be Christ. And it's gonna cost you to see Christ in your life. And so now he's preparing them for the pain of the promise. And you have to understand that people that don't pay for or don't understand cost don't really understand value. People don't know what you paid. They can't understand and appreciate the real value of it. I understand this because when you have to pay a cost, you start to become responsible and considerate, and you have understanding of value when you have to pay for it. Yeah, when you worked all summer and saved your money, when you worked an extra job and you did all of these things so that you can have some of the things that you have, you understand how much value it has because of the work, because of the cost, what it cost you. Look at somebody, say it's going to cost you something. And my grandmother taught me this principle when I was young. She said, as long as you get it for free, you'll never appreciate what you have. Okay. See, once you begin to understand cost, you begin to appreciate value. This is why every teenager needs a job. Hallelujah. Holla back, every parent. Because they say things like, Dad, these sneakers are only $89. Dad, they're on sale for $150. They think it's just money. Well, you got it. Yeah, I got it. They don't understand costs until you tell them I'll go half. When it takes them a month to save up $100, that sneaker for $89 doesn't look as good because the value of their $100 has changed because it cost them something. Okay, all right, y'all don't like that example? Ladies, this is why I know you shouldn't sleep around, but you definitely shouldn't sleep with him if you're not married because he didn't pay for it. So why are you giving him the milk for free? I'm just saying you just, there's a value. Somebody say, I know my value. If you understood your value and understood what it costs to be who you are, you wouldn't give away yourself for free. Fellas, stop just doing whatever just to get attention. You trying to be fly for people that don't even matter when it's costing you more than what you're getting back as a return on your investment. Look at somebody, say it costs you something. Yeah, and so if people in this next season of your life, people have to realize if they want you, they got to pay for it. Just tell somebody, got to pay for it. Yeah, you got to pay for my time. And I'm not talking about money. If you think I'm talking about money, you missed it. I'm saying that it costs you something and it costs me something for us to be in relationship. It costs me something to be intimate with you. And I'm not talking about romantic intimacy. I'm talking about friendship, relationship, intimacy. It costs something to be vulnerable. And I have been through too much to give out who I am for free. And so I'm looking for relationships. Everybody say squad goals. As we're moving forward and God is shifting us, you have to be careful who you surround yourself with. You have to be careful who you share your essence with and your values and your ideas. Everybody's not qualified to handle your qualities. Jesus starts telling them and speaking to them about purpose. And when he's speaking to them about purpose, he starts making them understand that it costs you something. It costs something to become. It costs something to become. It costs something to become. You don't just become. It costs something to become. There's a price. You have to pay a price for what you want. Okay, y'all don't believe me? We look in the Old Testament. We had Jacob. Jacob was in love with Rachel. He wanted Rachel. He said, whoa, when I see Rachel, he goes to Rachel's father and says, let me holler at your girl. He says, you want Rachel? He says, yeah. He says, you really want Rachel? He says, yeah. You sure you want Rachel? He says, yeah. He says, okay, work for me for 7 years. Everybody say 7 years. That girl must have looked good. He worked for 7 years to get Rachel. They get to the wedding. All of a sudden, they're at the altar. The veil's covering her face. He says, will you take this woman? They say, I do. He says, yes, you may kiss your bride. Moves the veil. And Rachel's, it's not even Rachel. It's her sister Leah. Now, Leah's not even cute. The Bible says she's cross-eyed and crazy. He marries, he paid for something. And then he looks, he's deceived, but he loved, watch this, he loved Rachel so much, he goes back to dad. He's like, yo, my dude, you played me. He said, I did get you, but I needed to get her out of here. He said, all right, but I still want Rachel. He said, okay, you got to work. I told you she looked good. 7 more years. He worked 14 years for what he wanted. Can I tell you something? When somebody really wants something, they'll do what it takes to go after it. And God is saying that if you really want the promise that I have over your life, look at somebody and say, you got to work for it. You got to work for it. God even expresses this because in John 3:16, it says that God so loved the world that he gave. Jesus connects us to the understanding of cost. Cost and value. And you will pay the price for what you think is valuable. That's why it's hard when people say things like, I really do want God, but. There has to be a point where you make a destiny decision. Like, I'm tired of being fat. But, y'all see it? I mean, I want a man, but we're going to get married one day. But, see, as long as you let your butt get in the way, you look at somebody say, don't miss it. Jesus, we understand that he pays with his blood. In Galatians 3:13, it said Christ bought us with his blood and he made us free from the law. And it says that Christ did it by carrying the load and being punished in our place. It tells us that because of the price that Jesus paid, the things that came to Abraham were now going to be available for those who weren't part of the original covenant. They're part of the new covenant. So in other words, it's saying that Jesus paid for us because he saw value in us. He paid the ultimate price. He paid the cost. He gave his blood because we were valuable, and we appreciate the value because we're connected to the cost. And some people don't understand why you're on this faith journey because they really don't understand what it costs to get you here. Can we just have a truth moment? We have not always been as sober as we are. And when I say sober, I'm not just talking about alcohol. Because some of us were drunk with lust. Some of us were drunk with crazy. Some of us were drunk with drugs. Some of us were drunk with so much ambition for things that had nothing to do with God. But now that you're soberly minded, you knew what it took to get you to this place of thinking, to want something different, to say no to the things that you used to be tied to. He's giving us an understanding of cost. Everybody say cost. So Jesus takes it to the next level. And you got to recognize this. Peter and the disciples are looking at him and they can't understand why is he talking like this. The reason he's talking like this is because they didn't understand. They didn't understand what he was really trying to say because they weren't the ones paying for it. That they weren't the ones making sacrifice. And so they can't understand price because they don't understand payment. It's just like what my daughter said, just it's on sale, get me that. And they think everything that comes from God is just asking for it. But you got to realize it costs something. Somebody shout, it costs something. So Jesus tells him, he says this, if you guys really want to know what it costs, if you really want to know how much it's going to cost you, let me ring it up. And he goes to the register and he starts pressing it and he says, okay, the first thing that I see in this walk of faith, the first thing that I see, he says, you must give up your own way. Everybody say, give it up. And can I just throw this in here for free? This is not one of my points, but I think it's a good point. We see this, and this is very important. This is the detail that I think we need to catch. Because if you really don't catch this, this whole message will blow up. Like, if you don't get this, listen, if you don't get, you better pay attention, lean in and catch this, because this is important. The devil will use what you love to get what he wants. Okay, this side, maybe see. The devil will use what you love to get what he wants. In verse 22, Jesus is telling them what's going to happen. Peter, he shows up. He says, this will never happen to you, Jesus. Not on my watch. No, I'm not about to let this happen. Not to my Lord. Not to my Savior. No, I'm not letting this happen. Jesus turns to Peter. Watch how ill Jesus is. I'm sorry, I said ill. Some of y'all don't know. That's a local colloquialism. That just means that Jesus is so powerful and amazing. And Jesus, he looks at Peter. Peter, watch this. Peter is saying, I'm never going to let anything like that happen to you. Jesus turns to Peter, catch it in verse 22. He says, get away from me, Satan. Oh my God, y'all slow but worth waiting for. He said, get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. He said, because you're seeing things from a human perspective and not God's. Satan will always use what you love to get what he wants. And you have to be careful, because he'll use the very ones that love you to trap you. Yeah, because how can I? He saw Peter, but he heard Satan. Okay, let me rewind. Let me say it again. He saw Peter, but he heard Satan. That's why it's faith and not sight. Because sight sees Peter. Faith hears Satan. That's why I told you in squad goals that everybody in your circle is not always in your corner. Because some people will show up as Peter, but they're really Satan. And in their love for you, they're really a trap for where God's trying to take you. So you have to be able to discern what voice is being spoken, so that you don't fall into the trap. Okay, Satan has a way of playing with us through what we love. You see what happened with Samson. Now, when I said Samson, who's the first person you thought of? Delilah, but Delilah wasn't the first one. She wasn't the first trap. He got married before. He fell in love with a stripper before. He had a way of picking bad women, and he would fall in love with women that weren't good for him. His first wife ended up marrying his best man. Oh my God. He falls in love with her, and now she sleeps with his best man, his best friend, his boy. She sleeps with him. He now falls in love with another woman, another trick that he loves, and he falls into a trap. Be careful, because the things that you love can become portals of opportunities to trap you. And we talk about Delilah, but it didn't start there. It started with something before her that he loved. Be careful what you fall in love with. He uses what you love. That's why your kids act crazy sometimes, because he'll use what you love. That's why them jobs, you got to be careful, because that paycheck that you rely on, he'll use what you love. You try to figure out why these things keep happening in your life, because he'll use what you love to get. It's not that he needs your car. Your car don't keep breaking down because Satan hates you. He don't need a car. He doesn't need your relationship. He doesn't need all the stuff that you're having trouble in. But he knows that if he can get to the stuff that you love, if he can get to the stuff that you love, because when your head is messed up and when your heart is broken, your head ain't right. Be careful. So here's the first thing I want you to get, because I know y'all tired. It's almost brunch time and lunch and dinner. So check this out. Here's the first thing I want you to write down when we're talking about the cost of the cross. Here's the first thing I want you to see that Jesus says. Here it is. Here's the first thing. Write this down. You will lose what you won't let go of. You will lose what you won't let go of. Jesus tells us this because he says in verse number 25, he says, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. When we're carrying the cross and we're looking at following Jesus, the first thing we have to recognize, we will lose what we won't let go of. What do you mean? Because holding on is a sign of distrust. When I'm holding on, I'm saying that I don't trust what you're saying, God. So when he says let go and you say but, what you're really saying is, God, I will win. And God says, it doesn't work like that. He says, you do, then I will. Everybody say, then I will. See, we're saying then I will, and God's saying then I will. And the question is, which will are you going to lean to? If you do it, he will. Okay. So you got to be careful, because when you try to hold on, you're saying, God, I'm not confident that I can trust you. And let me tell you what fear does. Fear makes you choose what's in your possession over what's in your promise. Fear will make you choose what's in your possession over what's in your promise. And many of us are not willing to let go of what we can see for what we can't. And what we see, what we believe God for has to override what we're seeing right now. Can I just help you let it go? Come on, tell somebody, let it go. Can I help you to let it go? The thing you got to understand is if what you're believing God for is bigger than what you have right now, then what you have is really a seed. Oh, and I'm not talking about offering. I'm not talking about come bring $25 to the altar and all your dreams will come true. We passed that day. I'm really talking about the things you're willing to let go of. You're saying, God, no matter what it is, I'll give it to you. And everything that we possess is for the promise. That's why the Bible says whatever a man sows, that's what he can expect to receive. God gives seed to the sower. It's not just talking about money. Whatever you're willing to sow, when you're willing to say, God, take this, he gives it back to you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Everybody say running over. See, when God provided manna to the children of Israel in the wilderness, he told them a key thing. He said, it's really a test of trust. No matter what level you're on in life, he's always going to test you for more. And the test is not for God. I hate when I hear preachers say, God's just trying to see if you're going to do. God already knows what I'm going to do. It's just that I don't know what I'm going to do. The Bible says that our heart is so wicked and deceitful that nobody even knows it. We don't even know our own heart. So what he does, he gives us a test. And when he gives us a test, he says, I'm trying to get you to see what you'll really do. That's why we say things like, oh, if I had the money, I would give this to the church. No, you wouldn't, because when you got $100, you didn't give 10. So why are you believing God for $100,000 when you couldn't tithe and give on $100? There's a principle of release, but here's what God does. He brings them in the wilderness and he gives them a test. He says, I'm going to provide for you manna. And when he gives them the manna, he says, now take enough for today, and then I'm going to hook you up tomorrow. If you try to keep more than what you need for the day, it's going to rot and turn into worms. He says, now check it out, though. On the weekend, I'm going to really hook you up. On the weekend, you can take a little extra, and then I'll see you again on Monday. That's how God worked. And so what they did, they took enough. But there were some people that said, you know what? Imagine this. You had Texas Roadhouse rolls falling from heaven. Every day, just falling in the wilderness. A little bit of bread and butter, little butter, that little sweet cinnamon butter. Glory to God. And then the glory of God, the open heaven, and manna began to fall, and they had the rolls from Texas Roadhouse. And as they're picking up their rolls from Texas Roadhouse, some were like, well, I'm going to take a little extra. Why? Because they didn't trust that God was going to do it again. Somebody just shout, he'll do it again. If you let go today, he'll give you more tomorrow. But the problem is they were trying to hold on too long. And some of us don't understand why life is going the way it is, why things seem rotten in our life, why life stinks right now, because you're holding on to expired blessings. If you hold on to what was, you'll never get what will be. So if I can let go and trust God for tomorrow, he'll provide it. He tells us you will lose what you won't let go of. Here's the second thing. This is important. You will get back what you give up. Jesus goes on in verse 25 and he tells them, if you hold on to your life, you will lose it. But here's the big part. He said, but if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. So you'll get back what you give up. If you try to hold on to it, you don't have the ability to sustain it. So if you trust me with it and give it to me, by the time I give it back to you, it'll look better. This is important because a real, true sign of trust is release. Think about that. Even in your relationships, right? The true sign of trust is release. You know why my wife allows me to go to Miami without her? Not because she's afraid of flying only, but because she trusts me. She knows I'm not going to a certain level of crazy. Certain level. A little cray. Little cray. But here's the point. If she didn't trust me, she would fight me from going. But because she trusts me, she can release me. Oh, somebody need to catch that. The real sign of trust is release. So when we our tithe and our giving and we do whatever we do, we're saying, God, I release this to you because I trust you. That's why you let your kids do certain things and don't let them do certain things. Some of your kids, you let them go here. Some of your kids, not if I can't see you, because you know that you can't trust them beyond where you can see them. Release is a sign of trust. And when you release what you're holding, you can receive what you're believing. Many of us are trying to receive what we're believing without releasing what we're holding, and it never comes back. So what I'm saying, when I trust God and I release and let go and give things over to him, whatever that thing is, what I'm saying is, God, this thing that I possess is too small compared to what you have promised for me. Everybody say, let it go. Okay, let me give you this. Galatians chapter 6. This is really where it gets good. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 7. It says, don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always harvest what you plant. Those who live only to satisfy their own lustful nature, it says it will harvest decay and death from that sinful nature. But those who live to please the Spirit will harvest everlasting life of the Spirit. So let's not get tired of doing what is good. At the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. In other words, the blessing follows the release. The blessing follows the release. And when we trust God with it, somebody shout, we get it back. And Jesus goes on, because the same thing happens in Matthew chapter 19. There's a time where this dude, right, we heard this story, the rich young ruler comes to Jesus. He's like, Jesus, I want to rock with you. I want to be one of your guys. Jesus like, you know what? Man, I like your swag. I got you. I like your style, son. Anyway, he tells him, I want to hang with you. He says, this is what I want you to do. He says, give up your possessions, give the proceeds to the poor, and then follow me. Notice when Jesus says this to him, he says, give up your possessions, take your proceeds, give them to the poor, and your treasure will change. Your treasure will change when you give it up for me. Because really, what you give to shows what you have value in. All right. Because I love my wife, there's things that I'm willing to do for her that I won't do for anybody else in the world, because of how I value her, what I give up. And see, Jesus tells him, he says, when you give it up for me, then you can follow me, because you can't follow me with all of that baggage. You can't follow me with those things in your heart. And many of us are trying to follow God with a whole bunch of stuff in our heart. And here's the problem. When we don't have a heart change, we try to follow God with our head. And if you only follow God in your head, you'll never walk in faith, because sometimes faith doesn't make sense. Sometimes faith doesn't feel good. So when I try to follow God in my head only, head knowledge will only get me so far. That's why I tell you, there's so many professors that teach in cemetery school. They teach in seminary school. They teach there and they don't even believe in Jesus. How you know more Bible than all of us put together and have no faith in it? Because head knowledge is not enough. I need more than head knowledge. I need heart knowledge. And the reason that God can't get to my heart, because I have too many things going on in there. I'm filled to capacity. So he says, you got to let it go. Everybody say, let it go. And when you let it go, you'll finish with better than what you started with. Okay, let me give you the third one, because this is good and we got to go home. Here's the third thing I want you to write down. When we're talking about the cost of the cross, Jesus makes it plain. He tells them, I'm going to Jerusalem and I'm getting ready to die, but I got to do it. Everybody say, but I got to do it. Oh yeah, that doesn't sound good, doesn't feel good, but say, I've got to do it. Here's the third thing I want you to write down. The payment for purpose is pain. And this is why I had to get you warmed up. I had to get you to this point. This is the point I had to get them to, Sean, because they don't like this part. The payment for purpose is pain. Because this is why we walk around and we wear crosses on our necklaces and on our shirts, and we have them on our churches, and it's a symbol. And we think it's just a symbol of salvation. It's a symbol of Jesus. But really, for the believer that understands the value of the cross, because they understand what Jesus paid, we understand this, that the cross becomes a symbol of success for the followers of Jesus. Now, I've heard people argue, even Jews, they say, that doesn't even make sense. You Christians are dumb. Why would you wear a cross? The cross represents blood. The cross represents death. The cross represents suffering. That's how they see it on one side. That's the fear side. That's the flesh side. But the faith side doesn't see all that. We see the other side. He's no longer on the cross. Do me a favor, bump somebody and say, because he got up. Oh yeah. And this is the thing. Jesus didn't just die on the cross, but he got up from the dead. And the cross is the place of exchange. That's the place that he said, I'm going to take all of your pain. I'm going to take all of your sin. I'm going to take all of your shame. I'm going to take all of your punishment. I'm going to take all your embarrassment. I'm going to take everything that makes you fall short, everything that makes you unworthy, everything that makes you lose your value, and I'm going to exchange it for my peace. I'm going to exchange it for my joy. I'm going to exchange it for my power. I'm going to exchange it for my strength. And so the cross becomes a symbol of success. The cross, it's the payment. It's the purpose. It's the payment for the purpose. And it's pain. But the thing is, we no longer focus on the pain. We appreciate the promise. When I get over it and I understand what Jesus did, I'm no longer looking at just the blood being shed for me. I think about the blood that's now on me. Jesus says it's free for you because I paid for it. And he gets us to understand this because he says to him, he says, take up your cross. This is the part I wanted to get you to. Because when I used to read this, I used to look at it like, we got to take up the cross like Jesus did, and we got to take on all this pain, but we can't do what Jesus did. Like, we can't get on the cross for our sins and anybody else's sins. So what is our cross? He says, take up your cross. And I've never really heard people talk about what our cross looks like. He said, take up your cross and follow me. And so I had to think about this. Well, what was the cross that he told them? The cross that he told them, here it is. It's rejection, hatred, judgment. That's everything that's connected to our cross. He said, if the world hates you, it's cool because they hated me first. If the world rejects you, it's cool because it rejected me first. If the world judges you, it's cool, it judged me first. So the cross now that we have to bear is what places in our lives, what places we have to live in a way where we don't look like everybody else. Oh my God. I didn't want to go too deep in this, but I got to do it. And I'm not talking about your wardrobe and your style. That's played out. They talked about that in the 80s. We ain't doing that no more. Tell somebody times have changed. Jesus tells them, he says, take up your cross. And we understand the concept. We're in this world, but not of this world. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have swag. Doesn't mean you can't have style. Doesn't mean you can't wear your Gucci belts, Brian. Doesn't mean you can't wear your red bottom. Doesn't mean you can't have style. It just means that you can't have the same spirit of the world. You can't have the same mindset of the world. When you take up your cross, you're saying, I'm denying myself of the things that get in my heart and block him. So my cross and Ezra's cross might look different because the things that block my heart might not block your heart. So a lot of times people try to put their cross on you. But God never told me to carry your cross. He said to carry my cross. Look at somebody say, my cross is heavy. And here's the thing. When you understand the cross gave him cuts. The cross touched some open wounds. When you carry the cross, It's identifying with Jesus in a very personal way. So when my friends go out to do certain things, there's things that I used to do, thank you old school, that I don't do no more because I'm carrying my cross. There's a way I want to respond sometime. There's some words that want to come out sometime. There's a way my body wants to respond sometime. But the way that I was, I can't be because I'm carrying my cross, and my cross won't allow me to cuss you out. My cross won't allow me to punch you in your face. My cross won't allow me to get drunk just because I'm mad. My cross won't let me get high just because I'm going through something. My cross won't let me cheat on my wife. My cross won't let me go crazy and do some of the things that my flesh tells me to do, because my cross has a cost. There's something connected to my cross. I know the cross is heavy, but tell somebody, say, carry it. I know it's hurtful, but carry it. I know it might isolate you, but carry it. I know it might be frustrating, but carry it. I know it might not seem fair that you got to be the only one in your family with all this on your back, but tell somebody, say, carry it. Because the weight of the cross is making you stronger. The weight of the cross is building you up. The weight of the cross is counting you worthy. Somebody say, carry it. There's a cost to the cross. Jesus says this, so we got to go. He says, take up your cross, then follow me. And it's interesting because he doesn't stop at follow me. He asks a question. And when he asks a question, it's not that he doesn't know the answer. He just wants to see, he wants you to see what you're going to say. This question, and then we got to go, y'all. You can go eat. He says, what is your life if you get everything you want and lose your only soul? Which tells me that the value of the cross is greater than the gifts of the world. And you think about it. Think about every single thing that you've allowed to block you from carrying your cross. Think about the cost. Think about the people. Yeah, you got people running through your mind right now. There's some people you got to break up with. There's some people you got to change your number for. There's some places you got to change your plans for next weekend. What is your life if you get everything you want and still lose your soul? And notice, when I read this, I was thinking, man, he's talking about you get all this stuff in the world and go to hell. That's part of it. But I thought about it. He said, lose your soul. You know what your soul is? You know, man made into three parts. You are a spirit that has a soul and lives in a body. And what that means is that you're not a body first. You're a spirit. And your spirit, your body is the clothes that your spirit wears. It's your outfit on earth. It's like when you go to space and you have the astronaut uniform, they put that on so that they can live in that atmosphere. Our spirit man lives in a body so that we can exist in this atmosphere. But when our body dies, when our earthly suit is no good, our life doesn't end. Our spirit man continues to live. So if our spirit lives, then what is the soul? The soul is self-consciousness. That's your mind, your heart, your will. So he says this, and I love how he says it. He says, what will it mean if you get everything that you want and you lose yourself? My God, so good. How much money is enough for you to lose yourself? He said, what will it cost you? 87 times, Jesus says, follow me. Walking with God is going to cost you something. And the question is, are you ready to pay the price? Are you ready for it? Come on, let's stay.